The purpose of this podcast is to educate and inform. It is no substitute for professional care by your doctor or your qualified healthcare professional. Never disregard or delay professional medical advice because of something you've heard on this podcast or in any linked material. Guests who speak on this podcast express their own opinions, experience, and conclusions. Dr. Shirley neither endorses nor opposes any particular opinion discussed on this podcast. The views expressed on this podcast have no relation to those of any academic, hospital, practice, institution, or other entity with which Dr. Shirley may be affiliated.
Welcome to Forever Fab, the podcast on fashion, the art of living, and all things beauty. This podcast is curated by Dr. Shirley Madea, MD, as the definitive source of holistic wellness through beauty.
The Forever Fab podcast values truth and authenticity. We encourage our guests to show up exactly as they are, as the best version of themselves. Please note, this podcast episode contains adult language. Thank you and enjoy. This week's episode is dedicated to fashion and fun. Actually, it's dedicated to style. Anyway, the topic is My Fabulous Life in Fashion. Welcome to my interview with Jordie Samerson. Jordie Samerson is a former model turned fabulous fashion stylist. She's a 20-plus year veteran in fashion and luxury in New York City. She studied tremendously and has an incredible background. And she started her career as an intern at Michael Kors while graduating from the Fashion Institute of Technology in New York. She's worked for several brands, including Nordstrom, Saks Fifth Avenue, Alexander McQueen, and many others. And currently, she's the general manager of Lanvin on Madison Avenue in New York City. She also sits on the board of directors for the Madison Avenue Business Improvement District. I think it's so important for women to sit on boards, so I'm very happy that Jordie's doing that. Recently, in the legendary September 2020 issue of Vogue, and by the way, that singy-songy thing that I did not get that from Oprah. That just came out because it was inspired by you. It just came out. I didn't bite it off of Oprah, so I just did it. Anyway, Miss Jordie was featured as one of the 67 most influential people in fashion. Now, we know there are thousands, if not millions, of people in fashion. And for Jordie to be named one of the top 67, that's pretty major. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Jordie is here with us today via StreamYard to tell us about her journey in fashion and how the fashion industry needs to transform if it wants to transform lives. So welcome, Jordie.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's such an honor to be sitting here talking with you.
Oh my goodness. Thank you for beautifying my screen.
Oh, please.
So shall we get into it?
Yeah, of course. Let's get into it.
Jordie, I have known you for some time, some years, and I do know about your background, but I don't think any of our listeners do. So tell me a bit about your history and your childhood and how you became interested in fashion and what you wanted to be when you grew up.
Yeah, sure. So I feel like believe it or not, I feel like it all started. Well, my mom always dressed me up in the most fabulous dresses and with the bows in the hair.
Yes.
You remember those bows? I
remember those bows. I used to cry because I didn't want the bows in my hair. My mother would be like, "Darling, do you know these were imported from France?" And I'd be like, "I don't care where they were imported from. I don't want ribbons." But anyway, we put the bows and the ribbons in. I get it.
Exactly. And I remember when I remember in the 80s or in like late 80s dressing up. I remember watching the movie Working Girl.
Yes.
And I remember Melanie Griffith. She used to get all dressed up. She pretended to be the boss and the CEO, and she got all dressed up and she went into Sigourney Weaver's wardrobe. And I remember having this yellow blazer and this floral dress. And I used to have this bright pink suitcase that I used to carry around. and the typewriter and say, I'm going into New York City to work.
Wow.
I remember just saying that I just wanted to be fabulous, wearing big shoulder blazers.
Yes.
The city to work. So I feel like my love started there. And then I went into, I went to Catholic school. And I remember my first, one of the biggest essays, like your final essay in 8th grade that you had to do was, it was a 100-page paper, and you could do it on anything that you wanted. And I did it on fashion from the 1800s until like,
wow,
those days. It was 1996. So I remember sitting there writing a 100-page paper on fashion. And that's when I realized, okay, well, I'm obviously interested in fashion.
Yeah.
And I was really into the magazines, and I adored Naomi Campbell,
Yes.
and Alec Weck, and, and I just exuded, and I collected the magazines, and that's when I realized, okay, maybe this is the industry for me.
Fashion, a 100-page paper on fashion from the 1800s. That was pretty precocious.
Yeah. 8th grade, I remember. And the teacher was like, okay. And this is Catholic school. So, I mean, okay, what are you? And I was like, yeah, this is what I wanted to write it on.
Good for you. And then you manifested it. Mission accomplished.
I did manifest it.
I mean, that yellow blazer with the shoulder pads and a pink suitcase, you were ready to work. Exactly. You were ready to work.
I was ready to work.
And you did. So to a certain degree, we're all a product of our upbringing. I've asked some other guests this question, and I always love the answers. So how did your background and your culture influence some of the decisions that you make? Because sometimes, depending on our backgrounds, our upbringing, our culture, we could steer away from what we really love, right? Mm-hmm. Or we can be drawn to it. We could be supported by our culture. So what was yours like?
Well, I come from a very typical Caribbean immigrant household. So both of my parents are from Grenada. Mm-hmm. I am first generation here. Yes. And so my parents were, you have to go to school, you have to study, and you either become a teacher or a doctor or, something of that effect. And when they said fashion, they were like, you don't make money in fashion. Fashion, what are you supposed to do with that?
Right.
You didn't even study for that. And I'm like, oh, this is, I remember in high school, I did a summer course at F.A.B. My parents like, this is not happening. And then eventually they had to embrace it because they saw my love for styling, my love for clothes, and my love for magazines and researching. And I think that eventually they just said, okay, just follow your dream, follow your love. And, I think it's a beautiful thing. And what I do say is that when I travel, mm-hmm. I really tell everyone to do the same thing as when they travel. If you're going to the Caribbean, whether you're going to Europe, to really look into the local fashion. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And really kind of try to incorporate that and bring that back home with you. And it's a little bit of a memory. And every time I do that, I do get so many compliments, on whatever I'm wearing. Where did you get that? I got this in a little shop in Italy, or, and in Grenada, we have a lot of African influence. Yes. So a lot of the patterns and colors you would see in some of the clothes down there. But it's funny because down in Grenada, they try to Americanize as much as possible. Of course.
Right.
Stay to your roots. Stay to your roots,
because it's beautiful.
Yes, exactly.
And speaking of FIT, because you took courses there, you went to school there. So what would you say is the most valuable thing you learned from your education there?
So my first degree is in merchandising and buying. And at the time I felt that it was very saturated. Every girl wanted to be a buyer. Yeah. And I learned a lot, but I said, I want to do something a little bit different. I want to expand a little bit. And there's a major called International Trade and Marketing. Oh, wow. And at the time, there weren't that many. I mean, you could see the graduating class. The buying team, when they would stand up at graduation day, was like hundreds of people. And then for us, ITM, it was just like 40 of us. It was like so small. It was such small. But today, I heard that it's one of the biggest graduating majors now because it's all about sourcing globally, what's happening. And so I think I was a little bit ahead of my time when I
you were.
that. And I knew that, that the companies, in order to be successful, you had to be, you had to scale on a bigger
Yeah.
level, and you had to
Yeah.
be global. And especially now with the internet, how important is that now, right?
Yes. Yes.
So I think that, all my courses with international business law, importing, exporting, I really learned the business side of the business of
Yes.
the fashion industry.
Yes.
And I think a lot of people, when they go to FIT, yes, the design is beautiful, and yes, you can have someone else do the business side for you, but I think it's important to have some sort of knowledge.
I agree.
In that, because yes, I'm in retail, and when a $4,000 bag is stuck in customs, well, it's like, okay, this paperwork is not on that bag, so I can understand why things are being stuck in customs, or what necessary paperwork is needed. I can help guide.
Yeah.
I think it's so important. That's what I really learned at FIT, and I'm so glad that I graduated with that major, even though I didn't go into operations, but I use those skills and I incorporate that into my daily life.
Good for you. That sounds quite valuable, actually, to be able to understand, frankly, the business aspect of lots of industries. If I were to build my own medical school curriculum, which I may do one of these years, if I were to build my own medical school curriculum, I would definitely have an entire track on the business of healthcare.
Yes.
I think it's absolutely valuable, and it's foundational. Yeah. So I'm glad that you did that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Now let's pivot a little bit and talk about the fabulous life of modeling. When and how were you discovered, and what did you learn from that?
So I started modeling. I had the interest when I was in high school. I was always tall and awkward and lanky. I was always the tall, skinny, awkward girl. But I always felt that I always loved being in front of the camera, and I wanted to explore it. And of course, staring at magazines all day.
Right.
And looking at my, I love, like I said, Naomi Campbell, and always practice her walk, and look at her walk. And I'm like, okay, I'm just like her. And
yes.
I ended up, exploring a few agencies, and I got into a very small agency at the time. I don't think they're around anymore, but they did get me some work. And I think that the highlight of my career was being a model on Project Runway on the final.
Wow.
Yeah, it was like when Project Runway was just beginning.
So I have to look that episode up.
Yeah, I was the designer. It was the designer, Uli was her name. And I think she was a Miami-based designer. So I was one of her models for the final show. And it was amazing. And to walk down, and at the time it was at Bryant Park, and it was just so amazing. And Michael Kors was there as a judge.
Yeah.
So amazing. But I will say modeling at the time it was very hard. And I always put my education first. So it's not that I was going to drop school and try to really pursue modeling.
Right.
I always education comes first, because they never take that degree away from you.
Right.
At the time, women of color, it was very hard.
Mm-hmm.
And when I would go to the agencies, first they always said I had a commercial look, and I agree and I understand, but it's okay, because commercial models, they do make even more money.
Well, what does that mean exactly? Commercial look.
Commercial look, that you're not high fashion, that you should be there in the commercials, or you should do ads for Target or Walmart.
I get it. Okay.
But that's okay, because you're still making tons of money. Those girls make more money actually than the high fashion ones. So it's only a few. I remember at the time it was only like a few, like they used like the same like 5 Black women, sprinkle a little color here and there.
Yeah.
But for the agencies, they would tell you, oh, go to Europe and build your book and come back. Or,
oh my goodness,
go to South Africa, build your book and come back. Get into a couple of magazines and then come back to New York. I'm like, I'm a born and raised New Yorker. I live here. Why do I have to go? So you're saying that Europe accepts Black women? I don't understand, it didn't sit right with me.
Yes.
So yes, I could have gotten up and gone to Europe, build a book, and come back. And I chose not to do that and to pursue my education. And at the time I was working part-time in retail, and that's how I fell into retail. And I think I made the right decision for myself.
Yes. Well, you're quite successful at what you do, so I know you made the right decision. Now, speaking of modeling, you mentioned that it was difficult for women of color, for Black women back then. My goodness, given, recent events, recent actually ongoing events, how would in your opinion, how is the modeling business different now than it was then? Better, same, worse?
I think that, well, I will say that there are more women of color in the magazines, but I
Yeah.
still think that there's so much more that we can do. And
Mm.
I think that the fashion industry, I wish they would embrace more, of women of color. And we've come a long
Yes.
way, but we still have so much more work to do, of all shapes and sizes. Back in the 90s, remember, it was all the waif-like, it was all the
Yeah.
cake, very, daunt looking. And yes, now it's more of like the Kardashians that everyone's looking at, but as for high fashion models, I would love to see more and more women of color. I think that there's still a stigmatism and still a little bit of a race,
Mm.
we're still,
Divide.
yeah, there's still definitely a divide. And
Yeah.
I think that I would love to see in the next couple of years for it to grow. Not only for the modeling standpoint, but also for, Black designers to have
Yes.
that visibility and credibility, and to praise them for the talent that they do have,
Yeah.
we definitely have some ways to go.
Understood. And you worked at a number of mass luxe retailers such as Nordstrom, as well as, the high fashion, high luxury brands such as Alexander McQueen. Now, in your experience as an insider,
Mm-hmm.
what would you say are the major differences between like the mass luxe and the high fashion luxury brands? I mean, is there like a philosophical difference besides a price point?
Well, it's all in craftsmanship.
Mm.
So for me, right now, fast fashion
Yeah.
is what everyone's doing, right? It's the Zara, it's the Forever 21. And I'm not going to knock it because I think that fast fashion is amazing for young people who might not have the financial status to or ability to purchase high luxury.
Yeah.
And I think, as we know, fashion and styling is a way of expressing ourselves. So, fast fashion is you have great access to kind of, express yourself and
Right.
to do it frequently because of the price point, you're able to turn it around. However, I've always been, even, when I was in college, I preferred always to save my money
Yeah.
and buy, even if it's at 80% off, it's okay to wait, because you're young, you're in college, you're starting.
Right.
But you want to look amazing. I
Yeah.
think that even if you save that money to get to get those, those pieces that are classic
Mm.
and invest in them.
The investment pieces.
They're investment pieces. I remember I remember at Nordstrom when I worked there, one of my first luxury pieces that I purchased was a Balenciaga jacket that was like to die for. And I saved my money. It was finally on sale.
Yeah.
And I remember purchasing it. I ended up wearing it to that casting for Project Runway. I swear to God,
Wow.
that sweater, because I remember Uli saying, "Oh my God, that jacket is amazing." And I swear it was that jacket.
Yeah.
It helped get me that.
You see? Fashion opens doors, folks.
Exactly. And to be honest, that, just picking in those investment pieces really takes you a long way because yes, you're putting money, it could be, let's say up to $1,000, $500, $600, but that piece, because of the craftsmanship, will last you for years and years to come.
Yeah.
The Zara piece is going to last you a season, 2 seasons if you're lucky.
Not even if you care for them and put them in plastic and storage bags.
Exactly. So, you're paying for the craftsmanship. A lot of these pieces are made in Italy. And I remember going to some of the factories when I go to visit in Naples to see people sitting there and working with their hands and how many hours of labor it takes to make that one piece. You have to be able to appreciate the beauty and the hard work that goes into those pieces. So that's the value. And I think that young people today, I don't know if they really understand that. I fear that's kind of a thing of the past, but we need to bring that back because it's what really is the foundation of fashion and how it all started, really. I mean, that Jean Lanvin, when she started her company, she started, as a millinery, and just like Chanel.
Yes.
And then she started making clothes for her daughter Marguerite, and people saw how Marguerite was so beautiful in her clothes, and they wanted to make it for them, for adults, and it all started that way. But she started this whole business, on craftsmanship, and it's a haute couture.
Yeah.
And of the time, it was very special. And I think we need to bring a little bit of that back.
I agree. And one of the reasons, I don't know if you know this, but one of the reasons why I have been a supporter and admirer of Jean Lanvin's work for many years is because of that story. She's a woman. She grew up in the craft. She honed it. She intentionally and initially did it for the love of her daughter. Yeah. And it became this fabulous brand. So for that story alone, every time I see the logo and the woman dancing around with, her daughter, I think, this is real. And you're right. We should bring some of that back. I wonder if there's a way, how people are into sourcing their food and where their fish on the plate came from, what ocean it was fished out of, etc. I wonder if we had a similar way to do that for fashion.
Right.
Like this piece was sewn by, Miss Alexandra, blah, 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 of what country, and she put this many hours into it. If we could connect to that person on the other side of the ocean, the city, whatever, then I think it would perhaps mean something more rather than just, this is just a sweater or a jacket, or it's just a Balenciaga jacket. That granted got you a fabulous job, but still, if we could connect to the people, because like many industries, it's really about the people, isn't it?
It is. It really is. And, for instance, there's so many amazing Black designers now, like Sergio Hudson. He got to dress Michelle Obama, right, for the recent inauguration for Biden. I think that, but there's so many people out there like him around the world. That could be in Africa, it could be in Sweden, it could be. And, we don't know about them. That's why I always say when you're traveling, I mean, I always love to do it, but when you're traveling, go to the local stores, see if there are local designers, support them, buy that piece.
Yes.
And bring it back with you, because you're supporting someone in their dream. And I really, really am a strong believer. Every time even when I went to Bali, I mean, I bought these like crazy, like bellowed out, like yoga pants. And I brought them here, and everyone's like, oh my God, where did you get those pants? I'm like, all the way to Bali. But definitely. I would love to start, maybe do something like that, and connecting and helping other designers, get that visibility out in the world, and so that other people have that access.
Very interesting project for you, Miss Jordie. You heard it here first, folks. That's right. Things happen. We change the world on this podcast, don't we, Jordie?
Exactly.
Now, speaking of people and connecting, you connect with people through your styling. So what do you love about being a stylist?
I love the way I help women, how to make them feel. I think that I remember, so for the longest time, even though I've been in retail for so long, I think it was up until I started working at Saks where I would complain. I'm like, I'm still in retail. I'm still in retail. I love the clothes and I love the product, because I know I want to work in fashion, but not necessarily in retail.
Got it.
So when I got to Saks, and I started at the worst time possible. I started in 2008 during the recession, where the world was literally collapsing.
Yeah.
And I remember like, wow, how am I going to get through this? Okay, let me just stay low and really kind of, connect with anyone who just walks into the door, whoever comes in my way. And by 2009, I had built a healthy clientele.
Wow.
And started dressing women on the Upper East Side, from the Upper East Side, and dressing them for the bar mitzvahs, weddings, and I always get so many referrals, and that's when I was like, wow, I really, really love this. Like, retail is not so bad. I know I want to be in fashion. I love the I love the product, I love the people, but this is really, I was really on cloud 9, and I still am.
Oh, great!
And I love the way, like, when a woman, I'll never forget, I was helping a woman, one of the bride, her daughter was getting married, and she was looking for a wedding dress and she didn't know. She was very lost. I remember helping her, a couple tries. We were trying to get things in. And I remember standing there in the fitting room with her, and she put on the dress and she started bawling.
Oh my gosh.
I knew that was the dress.
Yeah.
And moments like that, I say, okay, like my job is worthwhile, because this is like to make someone feel so good and so beautiful.
Yes.
It's really so rewarding. And
Yes.
I really enjoy that part of styling.
Yeah.
Personal shopping.
Well, you are one of the most perfect hosts for this, or rather a guest for this podcast, because this is what we do. We help to make the world a beautiful place. And you're doing that through your styling, and you're connecting with women. And I suspect that part of that is helping women to love their bodies through their clothing options. Yeah. So how do you just described the perfect experience or story, because my next question is, how do you manage the emotions associated with women's body consciousness?
Right. So when you work in retail, you're almost like a therapist as well.
I know all about that. Fashion, beauty, therapy.
But the part of the love, I love the conversation with my clients, and I really enjoy them. I enjoy sharing my story. I love hearing their story. Yeah. And, it's helping. Not everyone knows what's best for them, right? So it's your job to guide them and say, okay, this silhouette doesn't fit your body type, but this does. Mm-hmm. And, in throughout the years and all my experience, I've become very good at, guiding women, okay, yes. This, you take these silhouettes for you. This is great. Don't do this, and it's become, it's a learning experience, right? It's also a learning experience for them. So they kind of learn how, what is really good for their body types, and embracing it. If you're a size 12 or a size 2 or a size 6, doesn't matter. It's all about, trying to make it work for you. Yeah. And I always say that when someone comes to me and they say, okay, I have a wedding, I have a wedding to go to, and I ask them, how do you want to feel that day?
Wow, that's great.
First thing I ask, I'm like, well, how do you want to feel that day? Do you want to feel like, very feminine? Do you want to feel sexy? Do you want to feel like the boss woman? Like, what do you want to feel like?
That's great.
And from there, I can say, okay, now I know which designers I can gear you towards, or what silhouette I can gear you towards, or what, color scheme I can tell, you can gear towards. And that, to me, I think that's where you can, gain that trust level with the client too. Yeah. Okay, this person knows what she's talking about, right?
Yes, yes.
And I know for myself, when I wake up in the morning, I say, okay, I want to kick some butt today. I put on an Alexander McQueen blazer.
Yes.
Or a leather jacket.
Fierce factor.
Exactly. And I put on those heels and I'm ready to rock and roll. And I'm the boss lady for that day. So if I want to feel feminine and sensual, and I put on Lanvin.
Yes.
A beautiful, sweater or a beautiful blouse and light color. It doesn't have to be black.
Right.
Light. So it's really just how you feel is all connected with how you look.
Yeah, because fashion is emotional. Clothing, your style is emotional.
Exactly.
I wanted to do you honor today by wearing this fabulous Lanvin sweater.
So beautiful.
It's so soft and comfortable. So there's comfort.
Exactly.
Right there, there's a bit of a, there's a V-neck. So there's a little sexy there. There's some exposed arm and skin on the arm. So it's sexy. So it's a little bit of everything. Right? It's like you wear the sweater and you're saying, I'm every woman.
Exactly.
So I do agree that clothing choices and options, and thankfully we have many, it really helps to, it helps to communicate or express a mood. I love that you ask your clients, well, how do you want to feel on that day or during this event? I'm going to remember that, Jordie. Thank you.
Yes, of course. And even with Lanvin, I will say that there's so many stories. So the buttons on your sweater are so her first fragrance was called Arpège. Mm-hmm. And that little ball that you see on your sweater is the top of the Arpège perfume bottle.
Oh my goodness.
There's so many beautiful stories that go along even within the collection.
Yes.
And there are a lot of artist influences, like French artists that influential from the 1920s.
Yes, I see that. I see that line.
Exactly.
Beautiful. Oh, I might have to come into the store. Although I can do equally as much damage online. Okay, and the let's see, social media. Let's go to that. Social media for fashion, helpful or hurtful?
I think it's very helpful because it's giving visibility to, like I said, the small designers who may not be able to have the funds to launch a whole ad campaign. You know, they have everything's on Instagram now, right?
Yeah.
Everything's on social media. Everything's on Instagram. If you want to promote, I mean, your whole business can be surrounded only by social media. So it can only help, and it's really good because you can have a voice. It's a way of expressing yourself.
Yes.
And I think it's a healthy, as much as I say, okay, I need to get off of this, I need to go from Instagram, but it's kind of like, well, you still have to promote yourself. It's a whole branding around it. And, you know, it's an easy way of branding these days.
Yes.
And it's very low cost, right? So
yes.
It's perfect. It's perfect for businesses, especially as an entrepreneur. If you're starting out in the world and you're starting out business, it's a perfect way to get visibility.
I admit I struggle with it from time to time because I know there's so much that I want to say and share. I just don't necessarily want to do it with a lens on my life, you know, but.
Right. I know. And so that's the other part too, you know, I think that you can pick and choose. So you can pick and choose on what you want to highlight, you know, if you're going through a divorce, you don't have to, you know, put it on social media, you know, you highlight some beautiful pieces, you know, that with either your business or, you know, some other aspects of your life. So I think that it's about picking and choosing. You know, I too struggle with it where you feel like you have to, you know, display your whole life on social media. And, you know, there's some times where I just won't post anything for days.
I know. Or, you know, the detox.
I'm just like, okay, I just need a couple of days just to, you know, step away.
Yeah.
But it's a way of staying relevant.
Right. I do understand that. I do. Well, so much has changed this past year and we're still in it, right? We're still like in a flux. Things haven't necessarily stabilized on so many levels. Fashion has also been significantly disrupted, as has everyone's life. Mm-hmm. As the general manager at Lanvin, which is a legendary French fashion house, as we discussed. Now, what changes are you seeing either in the store or online and e-commerce? Are there trends that are coming out that as a result of the pandemic, and obviously the economic disruption? Are you seeing any trends that have emerged?
Well, I will say, coming out of lockdown last year, end of June, we had received a significant amount of phone calls from new customers who have never shopped the brands, who have seen things online that might have been sold out. And so they want to see the other offerings, which is great. So it's the online presence is so important now.
Yeah.
Not everyone feels comfortable getting into a store right now, even with the vaccines, and, you know, not everyone's comfortable. And especially being on the Upper East Side, we have a more mature clientele, and they have to get vaccinated. They have to feel safe. They don't want to come to the store. So we are seeing a trend of people seeing things online and calling the store and saying, okay, I've never shopped this brand, but I definitely want to see more of it.
Yeah.
I'm seeing that women, it's funny because it goes two ways. We have women who are coming in looking for just, you know, very toned down, like pajama pants and knits. And then we have the other side of women who are looking for evening events. Yeah. Because all those weddings that were postponed last year are going to happen this year.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like they haven't happened this year. Yeah. So they're looking for either evening or very comfort. What I will say is that men are shopping a lot more now. Even
interesting.
More women, which is very strange. And the men are the ones who are like, okay, get me like 3 pairs of the sneakers, 4 pairs of the sneakers, get me 10 of those polos. It's very interesting. The hoodies, the t-shirts and they're not necessarily looking for suiting, because I think that you have to industry. I think people who work in real estate, they're still shopping suiting, and but I think everyone's everyone's working from home still.
Yes.
So not everyone's looking for things to wear to work, but I do see a trend of more men shopping, believe it or not.
Interesting.
And the women are either going super comfort or going for super evening, and there's like that in between is kind of like a gray area.
Yeah.
Accessories. Everyone is looking for accessories, handbags, costume jewelry, sneakers.
Yeah.
So right now, even with Lanvin, we're doing very well with our new bumper sneaker, the new curb sneaker. And I think it's a way of, they say, okay, you have no place to go right now, right? I mean, if you even feel comfortable going into a restaurant, but how do you update your wardrobe because when you make a purchase, you have to feel, you want to feel like you're new. You want to incorporate something new into your wardrobe. So how can you do that? A sneaker is the easiest way. A sweater, a nice knit is the easiest way.
Yeah. And they're comfortable.
Exactly. So I think people are really going for comfort, and that's their what's driving them to the stores. If there's if there's any kind of interest.
I agree with you. I really believe and feel strongly that things will come back, and life will be, robust again. I just think that the parameters will be different.
Yes,
I do. Things will be different. They won't be the same because that's not the point of a lot of things, right? Not to be the same. There have been seismic shifts, and I think we're going to incorporate that in our, in the next phase of our lives. Speaking of the next phase and the current atmosphere, a lot has happened in this past year, and a lot is still happening. How do you feel the movements, whether it's Me Too, particularly Black Lives Matter, have those things been a wake-up call for fashion?
I think it has been a wake-up call for fashion. I think that, brands are becoming more aware, and it goes back to the modeling, what we were discussing before is like, years ago, agencies weren't booking, they weren't signing on Black models. I think having more of an awareness now, magazines are, opening up their eyes a little bit. And I think that us having a voice is rocking the boat, and it's making people say, okay, like we really need to incorporate a Black model, or, highlight a Black designer, or, I think that, or highlighting a Black actress. I think these are all, it's also important that this movement actually did happen last year. It's so sad to see, the riots and all of these things happening. But like, if we don't raise our voice, change will never happen.
Yeah, I agree.
So, and I think fashion has been one way for so long that it needed this wake up call. It needed a shake up to say, okay, like we need to open our eyes and be open to other.
Absolutely. And I would agree. I would say the same about the beauty industry on many levels, whether, it's makeup or skincare, all the way up to plastic surgery. The wake-up call, the bell has been sounded. I just hope and pray that people are not only listening and becoming aware, to your point, but also doing something about it and taking action. Because we certainly can't do it alone. And many industries, listen, it's business, right? The bottom line is the coin. I am hoping that people collectively and globally understand that it is in the best economic interest of everyone on all sides to include people of color and to diversify the offerings, the pictures, the backgrounds, everything. It only makes sense because this is what the world truly looks like.
Exactly. And I think about even my own children, what is this saying to them? I hope that by the time they become teenagers that, that the world is changing, the world will change, and they will see, the true diversity in the industry, in all the industries pretty much.
Yeah.
And like you said, even especially in beauty, there's some companies that don't have every shade of
Right.
color. I struggle
Right.
with that sometimes,
Yeah.
and even, one of my favorite companies that I use for
Hmm.
like my foundation, they stopped, making my color.
Wow.
So, and I don't want to say who it is, but
Right. No, of
that's
course.
very
Yeah,
that's very disturbing to me. And
of course.
is our dollars not good enough, or is it not? What is that?
Yeah. What does that mean?
What does that mean? So
Right.
it's very disturbing, and I hope that companies do see that, the value of our dollar. That Black people do have a spending power too.
Yes.
We have a very large spending power. And I
Yes.
think that's why I'm so adamant about saying, we should support each other, especially in like Black designers, Black owned companies, to circulating that dollar, that Black
Yeah.
dollar within our community. It'll build generational wealth.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think it's something that it's a movement that we really need to be very serious about and really support each other, because
Agreed.
if not, we will always be where we are, and we need to really help each other out and to support each other to rise above everything. And that's the
100%.
only way we're going to be able to do it is just circulate that dollar with us.
Agreed. Agreed. Now, being an insider in fashion, in your experience, what do you think are some of the challenges that, BIPOC or, people of color as designers and stylists face in fashion? Why has it been so challenging to get that platform?
I think that I know for myself, I remember, because when I worked at Saks, I remember some people say, oh, not so many Black people get promoted, but I got promoted. I did get
Yeah.
promoted at Saks several
Yeah.
times.
Yeah.
And I think it's just being recognized and having the opportunity to be recognized for your talents.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think we always get that opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like even my career at Saks was amazing because they gave me the opportunity to really show myself and
Yeah.
my ability and what I could do.
Yeah.
But I think that it's the opportunities that is not always given to us.
Yes.
I think that's what holds us back. So we don't get spotlighted. We get shoved to the side, but I think right now there's so many amazing Black stylists out there who's doing so amazing. Like for instance, Kalila Beavers, she does amazing with all the ball players, and they're doing, she's doing such an amazing job, and it's really refreshing. And
Yeah.
myself, hoping to have my own styling company one day, that I can be on that same level and share my knowledge and dress people and start help them feel good, no matter what color they are.
Right.
But to do it as a Black woman, to have that point of view and to have that voice can be so inspiring for, the kids of, the children, the kids of my age group, my children's age group. So,
Yeah.
They look up to me and they say, wow, it's so amazing that you're doing what you're
Yeah.
doing with my little cousins. And I think that we have to be given that opportunity.
Yeah. Because really, style has no color. Style has no color. And
Exactly.
if someone were to argue that and say, oh, yeah, style definitely has a color, I would say it's green, right?
Yep.
Because in the end, that's what you want to be able to produce. On one end, you want to be able to produce the revenue. And on the other end, you want to be able to feel good about helping people feel happy and making people feel happy. So I agree with you on that point.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned your children, your two beautiful boys. Beautiful boys. Oh my goodness. And I can't wait to play with them in the park one day. What do you teach them about what's going on now? What do you teach them about color, about race, about equity and fairness in life? How do you do that?
Before last year, I never really spoke about color because first of all, they're mixed. So they are half Italian and half West Indian, right?
Yes.
And I never really spoke about color, but last year when the Black Lives Matter that came out, I had to talk about it.
Of course.
We couldn't ignore it because it was a real problem.
Yeah.
And they saw it on the news. And when we went to the city, they would see the marches. Even my son Francesco, he went out and he was leading a march on Union Square. Black Lives Matter.
Sì, certo, bello. That's right.
Exactly. And I think it's important that they, even as mulatto kids, that they understand both, you know, where they come from. And they have to understand that their Italian side is beautiful and their Black side, you know, their West Indian side, the Caribbean side is just as beautiful. And they are so lucky to have the opportunity to have such rich cultures, and to have, you know, that my parents, you know, give them the opportunity, and I give them the opportunity to teach them about, you know, the cultures of the Caribbean, of the West Indies, of Grenada. And then, you know, they have their father to teach them about the Italian side.
Yes.
But I think that for me, you know, now, like Francesco, my older one, he's in second grade. He's finally learned about, you know, Martin Luther King Jr. I had to sit down and talk about it all.
Yeah.
You know, we sat and we watched the movie Hidden Figures.
Wow.
Which was, you know, I think that was, I wasn't sure, are they too young? Because, you know, it's also an age thing. It's 5 and 7.
Yes.
So I was like, are they too young? And I say, you know what? They're not too young.
No.
They're seeing it all. They're going to experience it. I've always experienced it. I grew up in Long Island, in an all-white Jewish area, and I've experienced my fair share of racism. So I think that they will as well.
Absolutely.
And they have to know how amazing they are, and you know, all the amazing accomplishments that Black people have, you know, done and accomplished in this world, and what they invented, and to explain Hidden Figures to them, and to see, they were like astonished on how, you know, the women were treated differently from everyone else, but they were more talented than everyone else in that room. So to explain that to them was kind of hard, you know. It's kind of hard, and it was very hard for me. I have to be honest with you, but I'm glad that I'm able to have that conversation with them, and they're understanding it. Because if they ever come into that, you know, where someone says that, you know, they feel that they're better than them because of their skin color, I don't want them to ever feel less than anyone else. You know, that they need to embrace their color and their culture and where they come from and their backgrounds. I think it's very important to have that conversation with children today.
Yeah, good for you. Because I do believe that education begins in the home. That strong sense of self obviously begins in the home.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if you don't discuss it with them, you know, they may come into things later in life and they won't know how to handle it. But now they're aware.
Yeah.
And it begins with the awareness, and it begins at home.
Good.
And what you teach the children. Yes.
Yeah. You've been listening to part 1 of this fabulous interview on the Forever Fab podcast. Stay tuned next week for part 2.
You've just listened to part 1 of Forever Fab podcast. Please stay tuned for part 2, coming up next.